Welcome to Engaging Truth. This is Dave Schultz, your host for this evening's program. And I've got someone sitting with me that we have never interviewed before. He always sits behind the scene, making sure that every program is perfect, making sure that the sound is right and the sight is right and the microphones are fixed up and the computer is ready. But very seldom do we ever say, Glenn Wheeler, would you sit down for just a moment, then we can talk to you. Welcome to the mic.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You've done some work with us for a long, long time, probably as many as 5 or 6 years anyway. And we've depended upon you an awful lot to make sure that the programming that we put together or that we articulate here is put together by you and sent to where it needs to go. So I want to say, first of all, without saying that or without asking that question, tell me a little bit about your family.
Well, I'm married to a recently retired choir director in Cy-Fair. She doubles as a choir director at in a lovely congregation in Cy-Fair as well. And I've got a college-age son who's in his third year of school at U of H. And we live in Lower Tomball, I like to call it. But we've been married 26 years and. Let's see, 93. Yes, that's right. 27.
What in the world got you started in media?
Well, media, audio is part of our family history. My granddad was one of the first engineers in Houston. He built KPRC radio. He traveled around with Governor Hobby for years and parts, all over the country, and then worked on the move from radio to television. My uncle had a small recording company, and then in the 70s built a photographic company called National Photographic Laboratories, where they did large picture production, but they did video and film and sound editing. They had a recording studio in the building. They had a picture studio, sound studio, just much like anything you'd see in a Hollywood movie stage. They had it at NPL, and that was a company my uncle owned with another gentleman. And so I've been exposed to audio and video since I was a very young kid. And my dad was a circuit pastor in the Methodist Church. And I remember musical groups would come into town, and every now and then we would have folks that would stay with us. And I remember having to give up my room to a drummer in a band.
Oh, we've all done that.
ORU. And I was just taken by the whole equipment thing, and at a very young age, I was in the third grade, putting in speakers and hooking up amplifiers, and I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And my first recording session was when I was in the 8th grade. It was an all-night session with my junior high band director's Christian rock band. That was my first recording session. I've never quit loving it since.
So you've been at this for 20 plus years then?
Yes, that's 32 now.
32 years. Give me something that helps us to understand the depth of anxiety that you experience in this kind of work, because we all experience anxieties. Tell me what it is that all of a sudden creates an anxiety that probably doesn't leave you as you go to sleep at night.
Is it all ready to go the next day? Especially on a Sunday morning, for worship, or I fortunately God's used me in lots of different professional experiences. Some very some big names and some not so big names, and so I've had a lot of experience, which is great. But the one thing that's still the same is I feel very passionately about making sure that I'm prepared for the job, and that all of the equipment is out, and that it functions, and that when the time comes that it's ready to go. And I strive to do the very best I can, even when things are breaking down. I've done many a concert, several concerts where half the PA goes in the middle of a song, and you just, I mixed a concert one afternoon, a very large artist, we lost the right side of our PA for one song, and then a gentleman stands next to me and knocks into a power amp rack, and magically the system comes back on, and happened twice after that, and still couldn't figure out why. And those kind of things keep you up when you think you're prepared, and then the wheels come off the train, and then those are things that keep me up. I think another thing, sometimes in this industry, it's we don't have no one hires audio engineers. There are not very many full-time jobs, so you're out there trying to make a living the best way you can with as many different clients and customers as you can work with. And so sometimes that concern of, will you have enough to survive, or will there be enough work is a big factor. In my case, I tell my son this all the time, so I'll say it here. God's never let me down. When we first got married, we were so broke we couldn't pay attention. And I'm telling you, she was a professional opera singer. My wife has an amazing soprano voice. And when we first met, and she was singing the opera, and she was singing here and there, and I was attempting to do what I could do, working as an audio engineer, and we were just broke, and I mean nothing. And I don't need, to this day, I don't know how we paid the rent. I know that we hoped we'd have enough for this and that, but God never let us down, and I just keep going with that.
A theme verse that I used earlier today and that I'll use again is Philippians 4:19. My God shall provide for all of my needs according to the richness that he has in Christ Jesus. I quote that to my kids all the time, especially when one of them will say, hey, Dad, we're having a rough time. Or a grandchild would say the same thing. You've talked a little bit about a low time. Tell me about a high time where you just, something happened in such a way that for you it's something that you can never forget because it was such a glorious experience.
Well, I wasn't expecting any kind of question about that. It's funny. I've had a lot of different high times. I think if you're one of the pastors I worked for, Dave McKechnie, is a wonderful pastor. He's not here locally any longer, but we celebrated his I want to say his 25th year at Grace Presbyterian Church, and that was a pretty high time for me because of everyone involved in that celebration for Dave. Not to mention, we had the Canadian brass in, and that was a fun time and things like that. But I've had, it's hard to, I've had a lot of great experiences. I've had some bad ones, but a lot of great ones, and I think that it's hard to come up with. That's a difficult question.
But that being said, something has come in the way of our work just within the last year.
Yes.
That's called a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
What in the world did you see when that thing first came around the corner? First of all, in your work and for you personally, and what it might mean for the future.
Well, I'll tell you, I saw panic. And I'll be honest. I guess we have to be on the radio, right? I panicked for a moment, and then I reminded myself, well, God's never let you down before. But I had on March 7th, I had gallbladder surgery, and I thought I was going to die. Of course, I'd never experienced anything like that. But I got out of the hospital on the 11th of March, and I watched as the world shut down. And every gig that I had from March until September 1st evaporated within about 36 hours. Every single one of them. And just the phone just rang and rang and rang. We're canceled, we're canceled, we're canceled, we're canceled.
Well, that was tough to take.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because you had established all these as not only things to do, but income producing as well.
Oh, that's it. Every bit of it. And then on top of that, I have a Sunday standing, church Sunday job, that stopped. We weren't going to church anymore. I couldn't understand that. I I still am not sure how I understand that. How you can go get drunk and go to to a strip club, but you can't go to worship. Well, I probably shouldn't have said that. That might have been too much. Sorry about that. The FCC will block that out.
But the big point is that you had to face this thing head on.
We all did.
What did you do?
Well, so I prayed first. I prayed, and I asked God for some guidance, and then it just so happened that a little church called me and said, "Can you help us make a video? We want to be able to communicate with our congregation." And I said, "Well, okay, yeah, I can help you make a video." And then a second one called and said, "We want to make a worship service. We're tired. We don't want our people not to see us in worship. We want to film our entire worship service," which is huge. And so that was two churches. So it was no more than about 2 weeks before my schedule filled right on up with producing, with producing online church services for different congregations, for two separate congregations. And I started doing that, and picking up any editing job I can. I had some educational companies that needed some editing work. I picked up that, and little by little, things began to grow. I designed a couple sound systems this summer. The parts of them are going in as we speak, and so I just started I started having to dig into other things that I have done over the years, and I don't think reinvent myself is the right thing, but I think look at other avenues and take some side streets and figure out how to make it all work. But I think the key thing is that I didn't have to do any figuring. God just laid it out. I mean, He really did. There's no. I wish I had some great struggle story, but I didn't. He just laid it out for me. And I didn't know in 1993 when I started learning how to video edit that in the year 2000 I was going to have to edit videos 2 a week, and big ones. And He knew. I didn't know, and I have enjoyed watching that. As I look back, and the panic has not is beginning to has really left. I've enjoyed seeing that He knew this was coming all along.
Let's just take a moment to kind of look at what we do at Evangelical Life Ministries. I'd like to share with you a little bit about ELM and the program Engaging Truth we are now recording for podcast distribution. We are a small group of Christ-centered folks who believe in the power of communication. It's been for many of us on the board or staff an eye-opening experience to know that with the technology available today, programs such as this can be disseminated electronically and distributed worldwide almost instantaneously. And that's not going to stop. That's why we are pausing for this moment to ask you to prayerfully consider helping us distribute what we're doing today. I tell you, in fact, I can tell you how right now. You can go to our website, elmhouston.org, to donate online, or you can send support to ELM P.O. Box 568, Cypress, Texas 77410. Also, when you go to our website, elmhouston.org, you can access podcasts of past Engaging Truth programs, or use the Contact tab to ask us a question or even submit a prayer request. But remember, we need your prayer. We need your support, because what we do here is volunteer work, and everything that you give us is for distribution. Let's go back a little bit to some important things that we have not discussed. You've seen in the last 5 months technology changing, and you're seeing it's going to be different in the future than it was in the past, even now. Mm-hmm. What do you see?
I see more churches I see more churches becoming present online, which, lots of churches have had websites and You can go see some programs, or you can email a person, or you can see some photographs. But now people are needing that communication and that connection. And I think that more people are moving to either an online streaming presence, or just some type of communication from a pastor, a video communication every week. That's new. That wasn't, you had a few churches that were already doing that, but not as the chief form of communication. And now that seems to be one of the chief forms of communication. Even with churches beginning to reopen, I think that they're still going to do that. And I'm not sure that, well, I know that in some of the cases of folks that I've talked to in the last 5 months, several churches, weren't prepared to do that. They weren't ready for that, because it's not something that had ever been done.
I think most of our churches weren't ready for that. I wasn't ready for that. I did not see just a few years ago even the social media thing taking
Right.
the step that it took. In fact, for the past 30 years, I've been comfortable in doing this kind of work because it was done through a radio station or through pre-recording like we're doing today.
Mm-hmm.
But never did I see in my best efforts this whole issue called the social media today,
Right.
and the effect that it's having. What effect do you see the social media having on what you do and what we need to have done?
Well, I tell you, in my case, it's it's kind of a two-edged sword. In my case, it's made things much simpler to get material to and from a person, but it's also made things more difficult in having to prep material so that it doesn't take up too much size, too much bandwidth, so it runs smooth, so everybody can download it, or everyone can watch it, or you can have 1,000 people watching it at one time. Those are all considerations now when we're producing things that were never a consideration before. I can tell you, if you were making a DVD or a CD, you were just concerned that all the material would fit on the piece of plastic, and that was it. That was the chief concern, that it would fit and it would play. And if you were cutting vinyl, that it wouldn't make the record jump. I mean, it wouldn't make the needle jump. But now there's so many formats and so many platforms that you have to keep up with. And I think, that's just technology. When I started cutting records, we were cutting records on tape. They took me kicking and screaming from razor blade editing to digital editing with a computer and a hard drive. I said there'd be no way I'd ever cut a record on a hard drive. And now that's all I do. And so technology is just moving forward, and we either move with it or we don't. And I think churches are in the same boat. They have to.
One of the beautiful things that I hear from my brothers out there is that, our church only seats 100 people, and we get 60 on a Sunday. But now we do the word and use the word over the television station locally. And now we're getting 10 times the amount of people hearing the message from here that have ever heard it on a Sunday morning. Here's a special blessing even for churches that are small.
Yeah, I think so. I was Sunday working, and there was some complaining from the IT person sitting next to me because the opposite was happening. They were opening church back up, and now so many people were coming back to church because they wanted to come back to church. Now the online viewership was low, and they were upset about that. And I said, look, you have people here, you have people there, show it all. I mean, no reason to complain. Let's go.
To me, it's been a beautiful evangelistic opportunity.
It really can be.
That unless we look at it squarely, we're going to complain because we've been used to having people around us.
Exactly.
And surrounding us in the church and singing the melodies within the church. And that's altogether different. Like creating a worship service for me now at the retirement village is difficult because you can only see 20 people. And the video camera is rolling to put all of this on the overhead television station before the day is over.
Right.
We didn't comprehend this a few months ago.
Well, and that's right. And the same thing with how people are doing worship now. We didn't comprehend having to worry about, having a crew call in at 6:30 in the morning and having cameras up and ready and charted. And none of the technical stuff, most churches were even considering until this pandemic. and people just weren't coming to worship, and we had to take it to them.
Well, I'm even talking to our board of directors and saying, we of the older generation have got to start backing away from this because the technology is taking away from us who used to do it in a simple way. The ways in which we did it in the past are no longer functioning properly. But the young people today understand the technology, and I have a young woman at the village where I serve as the chaplain, has become just a master at technology and can just do anything with almost like magical hands.
Yeah.
Is that going to change for the future, or will we change even more than what we see it today?
I honestly think more's coming. To be honest, I really, and I was talking to a colleague of mine, and we're throwing ideas out. We have no clue what's coming next because we've seen so much change, in just a recent amount of time. But I think that the ability to or the demand on what you can put out and produce much quicker is on the horizon, and the ability to do those things in higher quality is what people are looking for, or just I think they're looking for a quicker. I think they're looking for a much quicker turnaround in what you produce, not necessarily higher quality, and which is frustrating for me personally, because I've spent my career working to make the highest quality product I put out, and that seems to be less important than getting it out the fastest. And so there's a bit of a disconnect for me, and I'm struggling with that. But I've got to figure out a way to do that. I'm a freelancer. I don't have a big retirement package, so I have to figure out what to do. And so, I see more changes coming technologically. I can't predict what they are. I certainly couldn't. I was not predicting streaming at all. That was, my definition of church on television was cameras, a switcher, a control room, and a satellite. That was, and that's the way it's been done for years. Never did I think we'd be hooking up with a Cat 5 signal and going right on out. I did not see that in my future.
You can sit by your iPad or your computer on a Sunday morning, and you can see church services everywhere.
Oh, yeah. You really can.
And you can do it all morning long.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thankful that there are young people today who understand, first of all, the necessity of getting the gospel out. But the second thing is understanding that the technology is one of the vehicles that's going to be used
Absolutely.
to make it happen for the future.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say how grateful I am that you've taken this little time to sit with us and talk about your work, and because people don't know what Glenn Weaver does behind the scenes. They never see you. They only see what has happened.
That's fine.
And that is precious to us because we've had this relationship for a long time. I just want to say thank you for being here and being willing to share your life and what Christ's message and his love means to you. And I'm going to close with a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for your loving kindness for all of us. Thank you for giving us the media world, which just a few months ago we really didn't comprehend. And it's even more comprehension less today, but it's visible for us because it's there. Thank you for getting us your Holy Spirit that motivates us to serve the way you've called us to serve, to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. We pray it in his name. Come back to us again on Engaging Truth, and good night.